welcome back to Humaning, the podcast where we explore what it really means to be human, messy feelings, big questions, and all. I'm Alina, here with my wonderful co host Elias, and today we're diving into a topic that's close to both of our hearts. What is a spiritual awakening? Whether you're deep into your own journey or just curious what all the buzz is about, we're so glad you're here with us.
Hey, Alina. Hey, friends. I'm really excited for this one. Spiritual awakening is one of those phrases that gets tossed around a lot, but it can mean so many different things, depending on who you ask. For some, it's this huge, life-changing moment, and for others, it's a more subtle, ongoing process. I think there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we dive in, if you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love if you could like and subscribe to Humaning. It helps us reach more people who are searching for these kinds of honest, thoughtful discussions. Plus, it lets us know you're out there walking this path with us.
Yes, please do. It really means a lot. So, spiritual awakening, I guess I'll start with what comes up for me. I think, for most of my life, I thought it had to be this dramatic, almost mystical event, like you'd be walking down the street, and suddenly the sky opens up, and you just know all the answers. But my own experience has been way more gradual and kind of messy, honestly. It's been about waking up to the fact that there's more to life than just the daily grind. There's this deeper layer I hadn't noticed before, like I'd been living on autopilot and suddenly realized, oh, there's a whole other dimension to being alive.
That resonates so much. I think a lot of us are waiting for that lightning bolt moment, but for so many people, spiritual awakening is more like a series of gentle nudges, or sometimes not so gentle nudges. For me, it started with a sense of restlessness. Things in my life looked fine from the outside, but inside I felt out of sync, like I was longing for something I couldn't quite name. It was only when I started paying attention to that longing and making space for it that things began to shift.
I love how you said making space for it. That's so key, because I spent years ignoring that restless feeling. I'd just fill the space with distractions, work, social media, whatever. But when you finally sit with it, it's uncomfortable at first. There's almost a grief for the life you thought you were supposed to have, or the person you thought you were supposed to be. Did you experience that?
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely a kind of grieving or shedding that happens. I remember this one afternoon, I was sitting in my car after work, just feeling completely empty. Like, is this it? Is this all there is? And instead of turning on the radio to drown it out, I just sat there. I let myself feel it. And it was scary, but also freeing in a way. It was the first time I realized that maybe that emptiness wasn't something to run from, but to listen to.
That's powerful. I think a lot of people can relate to that moment. Sometimes the awakening starts with a breakdown, or just a really deep sense of dissatisfaction. And then, over time, you start asking different questions. Not just, how can I fix this? But why do I feel disconnected? Or, what do I really want from this life? For me, poetry helped. I'd write these rambling, half-coherent journal entries just to process what I was feeling.
I love that you turned to poetry. There's something about creative expression that can cut to the heart of what we're experiencing, especially when words fail. I guess for me, mindfulness was my entry point, just learning to be with myself without judgment, even for a few breaths at a time. That was a small awakening in itself, a realization that I didn't have to believe every anxious thought that popped into my head.
Yes, and I think that's a huge part of spiritual awakening. This shift in perspective, where you realize you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're the awareness behind them. It sounds so simple, but it changes everything. Suddenly, you're not just reacting to life, you're observing it, engaging with it in a new way.
Exactly. I remember reading something that said, awakening isn't about becoming something new, it's about remembering who you already are. That really landed for me. It's almost like coming home to yourself beneath all the layers of conditioning and expectations.
That's so true. And I think a lot of people imagine that once you wake up, life just gets easy and peaceful. But honestly, It can be more like opening Pandora's box. Suddenly, you're noticing all these patterns, old wounds, limiting beliefs, things you'd rather not look at. It can be overwhelming.
Yes, yes. I always like to remind people that awakening isn't about escaping your problems, it's about seeing them clearly for the first time. There's a tenderness that comes with that too. You realize how hard you've been on yourself, how much you've been carrying. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is just be gentle with yourself in those moments.
I think we don't talk about that enough. The vulnerability that comes with awakening. There's joy, for sure, but also confusion, fear, even loneliness. Did you ever feel isolated when you started waking up? Like you couldn't relate to people in the same way?
Oh, absolutely. At first, I felt like I was losing my footing, like the things that used to matter or the ways I'd connect with friends suddenly felt hollow. I had this urge to find my people, folks who understood what I was going through. That's actually part of why we started this podcast, right? To create a space for those conversations.
Exactly. I think one of the biggest myths is that spiritual awakening is this solo journey. Sure, the inner work is personal, but we need community. We need other people to reflect our growth back to us, to normalize the messiness. I remember when I first started opening up about my experiences, I was nervous I'd sound weird or pretentious, but usually people responded with their own stories, or at least curiosity.
Yes, I think there's a real hunger for authenticity. When we share our spiritual journeys, the highs, the lows, the doubts, it gives other people permission to do the same. No one has it all figured out. We're all just stumbling our way through, waking up a little more each day.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the point. Awakening isn't a destination, it's a continual unfolding. There isn't this finish line where you're suddenly enlightened and nothing bothers you anymore. It's more like every time you think you've figured it out, life gives you a new lesson, a new layer to peel back.
I love that metaphor of peeling back layers. It's like we're onions, just revealing more and more of our essence with each awakening, and some layers sting more than others.
That's so true. I think, too, that sometimes people get discouraged if they have a glimpse of awakening and then fall asleep again, like they get caught up in old habits or life gets stressful. But that's totally normal. It's more like a spiral than a straight line. You revisit lessons, but from a new vantage point each time.
Yes, growth isn't linear. There are seasons to awakening. Sometimes it's all expansion and clarity, and other times it's contraction and confusion. I love to remind myself that even the messy parts are part of the process. It's all sacred.
I'm curious, have you ever had one of those moments where, even just for a second, everything felt connected? Like you could sense some deeper meaning or presence that's always there, even if you can't explain it?
Yes, definitely. There was this moment during a silent retreat, just sitting outside watching the breeze move through the trees. For a few breaths, I felt totally at peace, like I belonged, not just to myself, but to everything. It was subtle, not dramatic, but it left this imprint. Even when I forget, I can come back to that memory and remember that sense of connection is always available if I slow down enough to notice.
Beautiful. I've had flashes like that too. Sometimes when I'm walking at dusk, or listening to a song that cracks me open. There's this sense that life is bigger than my worries, that there's a kind of quiet wisdom running through everything. Those moments are rare, but they're anchors for me.
Yes, anchors. I think those glimpses can sustain us through the tougher times, reminding us that awakening isn't just about feeling good. It's about being real, being present, even when it's hard.
That's so important. I think sometimes the idea of spiritual awakening gets packaged as this blissful, always happy state. But actually, it's about becoming more human, not less. Feeling things more deeply, not less. Would you agree?
Completely. Awakening has made me more sensitive, more open hearted. Sometimes that means more joy, but sometimes it means more grief, more empathy for suffering, mine and others. But I wouldn't trade it. It feels more true.
Same here. I think, at its core, spiritual awakening is a call to be fully alive, to show up for life as it is, not as we wish it would be. And that's both the invitation and the challenge.
I love that. For anyone listening who's in the thick of it or just starting out, I hope you know you're not alone. There's no right way to awaken. Sometimes it's a slow unfolding, sometimes it's a wild ride. Trust your own path.
Yes, trust your own path. And also, be gentle with yourself. Sometimes the most profound shifts come from simply paying attention to your breath, to the stories you tell yourself, to the way you treat others and yourself. Awakening isn't a race. You can't force it.
I'm really glad you brought up the idea of being more human, not less, through awakening. I think a lot of folks imagine it's about transcending everyday life, like you suddenly float above all the messiness, but honestly, I feel more rooted in the little things now. The way sunlight hits the kitchen table, the sound of my neighbor's laughter, even my own awkwardness or impatience. I feel more present even when things aren't perfect.
That's such a good point. I notice that too. It's almost like the ordinary moments become extraordinary when you actually pay attention to them. Like, I used to scroll through my phone while eating, but now I try to just taste the food, notice the textures. Sometimes I'll catch myself and just laugh, like, wow, I've been eating this for years and never really tasted it. That's a kind of awakening too, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think those little awakenings are just as important as the big ones. It's all about coming back to the present over and over. I actually had a funny moment last week. I was rushing around totally in my head and I spilled tea everywhere. Old me would have spiraled, but I just paused and noticed the warmth, the way the sunlight shimmered in the puddle on the floor. For a second, it was almost beautiful. It's like life keeps giving us these invitations to wake up, even in the chaos.
I love that image. The sunlight in the puddle. It's so true. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor with these reminders. I think, too, what you said about old patterns is important. Even after years of doing the work, I still catch myself getting impatient or reactive. But now, instead of beating myself up, I can just notice it, breathe, and start again. That feels like a huge shift.
Yes, that's one of the gifts of awakening, I think. The ability to forgive yourself, to start again in any moment. And that applies to others too. I find I'm less judgmental, more compassionate, because I see how hard it is to be human. We're all doing our best with the tools we have.
That's something I'm still working on, honestly. I grew up in a pretty critical environment, so my inner voice can be harsh. But the more I practice self-compassion, the more it spills over into how I see other people. Like I'll catch myself about to criticize someone, and then I remember, oh yeah, they're figuring it out, just like I am. It's humbling.
It really is. And I think that humility is an underrated part of awakening. There's this realization that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay. In fact, the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. I actually find that comforting now. It's like there's room for mystery.
I relate to that so much. Early on, I wanted certainty. I wanted the right spiritual path, the big epiphany, the perfect meditation practice. Now, I'm more comfortable with not knowing, with letting life surprise me. I think that's where the magic is, honestly.
Magic is a great word for it. There's a kind of wonder that comes with not having to control everything. I remember a few months ago, I was really struggling with a decision. Should I stay in my job? Should I take a leap? I kept looking for a sign, some kind of cosmic green light, and then one evening, I just let go. I stopped trying to force an answer, and I felt this peace settle in. The decision didn't come right away, but the trust did.
That's beautiful. Letting go of control is so hard, but so freeing. I've had similar moments, like when I'm wrestling with something, and then I just surrender. Sometimes the answer comes later, sometimes it doesn't, but either way, I feel lighter. It's almost like awakening is less about gaining something and more about letting go.
Yes, letting go of who we think we have to be, letting go of old stories, even letting go of the idea that we have to be awake all the time. There's freedom in that. And honestly, I think humor helps. I try to laugh at myself, at the whole process. It keeps things light.
Humor is essential. I mean, if you can't laugh at yourself for getting caught up in old patterns, What's the point? I remember once, during a meditation, I was supposed to focus on my breath, but I kept obsessing about what to make for dinner. At some point, I just started giggling. That, in itself, felt like an awakening, just seeing the absurdity of the mind.
I love that. And honestly, I think that's what makes the journey sustainable. If we approach awakening with this heavy sense of, I have to figure it all out, it gets exhausting. But if we can bring curiosity and playfulness, it becomes an adventure.
Yes, curiosity over judgment, always. And I think, too, that's where community comes in again. Having people you can share these moments with, people who get the weirdness, who can laugh with you, or hold space when it's hard, it makes all the difference.
Definitely. I sometimes think about the people who have shown up on my path teachers, friends, even strangers. Sometimes a passing conversation can spark a whole new layer of awakening, and sometimes just knowing you're not alone is what helps you keep going.
That resonates a lot. I remember this one time. I was at a cafe, feeling lost and kind of invisible. An older woman sat at the table next to me, and we started talking. She shared a bit about her own spiritual journey, and it was so unexpected, so genuine. It reminded me that everyone has a story. Everyone is on their own path. That conversation stayed with me for weeks.
That's beautiful. I think those chance encounters are part of the magic too. Sometimes the universe brings us exactly who or what we need right when we're ready for it, or maybe when we're not ready, but need it anyway.
Yeah, sometimes the lessons come wrapped in chaos or in people we'd least expect. I've learned a lot from uncomfortable situations, even heartbreak. Looking back, some of my most painful experiences were actually catalysts for awakening, even though I couldn't see it at the time.
Same here. I know we've joked before that spiritual awakening should come with a warning label like caution may cause you to question everything you thought you knew, but it's true. Those difficult times can crack us open in ways nothing else can. It's not always fun, but it's real.
I love that. Cracking open. It's so vulnerable, but also so alive. I think if I could give advice to anyone starting this journey, it would be let yourself be cracked open. Don't rush to patch things up or numb out. The discomfort is often where the growth happens.
Yes, and also find practices that ground you, whether it's meditation, journaling, walking in nature, or just breathing deeply for a minute. Awakening can feel destabilizing at times, so having rituals or routines can help you feel anchored.
That's really good advice. For me, nature is my anchor. When things get overwhelming, I try to get outside, even for a few minutes. There's something about trees and sky that reminds me of the bigger picture. What grounds you, Alina?
For me, it's definitely mindfulness and movement, yoga, gentle stretching, or even just placing a hand on my heart. Sometimes I'll sit with a cup of tea and really savor it, turning it into a little ritual. Those small acts bring me back to myself.
I love that. It's a reminder that awakening isn't about escaping the body or the world. It's about inhabiting them more fully. It's about being here, now, in all the mess and wonder.
So true. And I think, too, that awakening invites us to be of service, not in a performative way, but from a genuine desire to help or connect. When you start to feel your own aliveness, it naturally spills over. You want others to feel it too.
Absolutely. Service doesn't have to be dramatic either. Sometimes it's just listening deeply to someone or offering a smile. I think when we're more awake, we see the sacred in everyone, not just in the people we like or agree with.
Yes, and we start to realize that we're all interconnected. My awakening impacts yours and vice versa. There's a ripple effect, even in small acts of kindness or understanding.
I love that image, the ripple effect. It's easy to feel like we're too small to make a difference, but every time we show up with a little more presence or a little more compassion, we're quietly changing the world.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who's feeling overwhelmed by the idea of awakening or maybe discouraged, please know that it's okay to take it slow. There's no rush. Even noticing that you want more from life is a huge step.
Yes, and it's okay to rest too. Awakening can be exhausting. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is take a nap, or unplug for a while, or just be gentle with yourself. There's wisdom in rest.
I couldn't agree more. The journey isn't about constant progress, it's about balance, about listening to your own needs. Sometimes the greatest insights come in moments of stillness.
It's funny, because when I was younger, I thought I had to chase after awakening, read all the books, try all the techniques. Now, I see that sometimes it's about allowing, not forcing. The most profound moments have come when I've stopped searching and just allowed myself to be.
That's so beautiful, Elias. Allowing rather than striving. That's really the heart of it, isn't it? Giving ourselves permission to unfold in our own way, at our own pace.
Exactly. And for anyone listening, just know that your journey is uniquely yours. There's no template, no right way. Trust what feels true for you and let yourself be surprised.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect note to start wrapping up on. This has been such a nourishing conversation. I hope everyone listening has found a little spark of insight or comfort today.
Me too. And we'd really love to hear from you. What does spiritual awakening mean to you? What practices or moments have been meaningful on your path? Please drop your thoughts in the comments or share with us on social media. Your stories make this community richer.
Yes, thank you all for joining us for another episode of Humaning. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need a little encouragement on their own journey. Every bit of support helps us keep creating these heart centered spaces.
And thank you for trusting us with your time and attention. We don't take it for granted. Remember, wherever you are on your path, you're exactly where you need to be. Keep waking up, keep showing up, and be gentle with yourself along the way.
We'll be back soon with more open hearted conversations about what it means to be human. Until then, take care, be kind to yourself, and keep seeking the wonder in ordinary moments.
Be well, friends. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Humaning.
Bye for now.
Goodbye, everyone.